Data is the new gold. How AI will treat our data.
Hello, welcome to this new panel where we are talking about data to be the new gold. We just heard from Angelo Dalli that in the future, or the future of AI will be not data alone, so we are going to take a deep dive or a deeper dive into the future of data. And what I realized in your keynote opening this day, you said there is never enough data available. And I think that's what makes it valuable, because we know from economics that's what makes things valuable when there's not enough of them. So where do you see the future of data? And what, in your work, what are the specific directions you are following?
Okay, so you rightly said, data is always a bit problematic because we're always wanting more and more data to build these large models. So from my perspective, it's really thinking creatively about data, thinking creatively how to obtain data, and always trying to find ways of increasing the data coverage that you have. It's really important to try to diversify as well that data. So not just simply relying on the data points that you have available, but try to think in terms of broader aspects, in terms of the potential solutions that you're aiming for.
So data, what's more than data that can be needed in the future?
Yes, you need to think more in terms of the data that you have, but also the data that you could potentially have. So maybe there are ways of creating synthetic data so that you have coverage of samples that might not be occurring in your current examples, but are still important to have coverage. Just because they're not occurring, it doesn't mean they won't occur, right?
Yeah. Well, Natalia, you were coming a little bit from a different direction, because you are trying to
keep the microphone
to develop ways to monetize these data streams. So you are have a more focused approach than on a university, where you just can go into the general and just get the basics right. You have to rely on in your work. So where are we in monetization? Where do you see the future of big data?
So this is really interesting, because tying into what Claudia has mentioned, right now, especially in the large language model schema, the monetization of AI is relying heavily on the data that's being provided. And it's not just data, that's not enough. The data has to be good data. The data has to be well processed. It has to be sensical. It can't have too many artifacts. It can't have too many problems, especially data that's input by humans. It's just filled with errors and errors that are going to completely set everything askew. So from our perspective, it makes sense that when we do take on this data, that we structure it right, we warehouse it, we treat it. And when it's treated, that is the particular point in which data is usable and monetizable. So a company can provide so many solutions. We have data as a service. We have crafting of data sets, which is so hot right now on the market, with all of these up-and-coming LLMs relying on open data sets, on data sets behind a paywall, just to keep training and keep advancing AI. And then we have all of these data-driven solutions that are coming out of the market. Right now, everyone is coming in hot with applying AI into their solutions, because there's so much value that is to be earned from adding AI to the solutions as we are.
Well, this sounds very promising, but let's move to Forbes Council member and the Chief Technology Officer of this of this group here that is providing the space for this conference.
Thank you.
So you actually have one affiliate conference here within the within Sigma, but you also, of course, using it yourself and are very much into the future and to monetize all the huge amounts of data running around here on the floor. So how are you doing that?
So data can be used in many ways, but the bigger question is, why so much data? What do you do with the data? And we know that one of the biggest problems in general in life, but also in the industry, in iGaming, is how do we make decisions? Are the decisions accurate? Are we making the right decisions, the right business decisions? And we know that decisions are also based on gut feeling. So what are we doing right now is we're gathering a lot of data, and through the help of AI, we are somehow standardizing or making the decision making better. This is not just data-driven decision making, this is data-informed decision making, which is quite different. And with the help of data, we have managed to shift the mindset and transform the way how we do with business. Previously, we were doing business mainly based on our, let's say, previous baggage or knowledge that we had from the past, or what competitors are doing. Right now, we have put technology at the forefront of our decision making, and therefore we are becoming more competitive, more disruptive, and let's say more creative as well.
So I'm sure you have a couple of examples that can illustrate that.
So for example, we have built a platform that helps us understand the whole user journey from A to Z, and through that provide actionable insights that we can take on that and make a decision about it. And we know that when you work on the affiliation industry in iGaming, understanding the whole user journey in a high granularity, it's quite a big of a task. And by having that as a competitive advantage, you're able to make ad hoc decisions which are quite accurate and reach to a level of predictive analytics where you can actually predict the outcome of your decisions. And that's what we have done with our tools.
Yeah. Natalie, so what are you thinking of these approaches, and what are your models that maybe you have something more you can offer?
I think that's quite right. So actionable decisions and actionable insights are definitely the way for businesses to move forward, I would think, especially as you have mentioned, Max, the way that you are creating not just data-driven, but these impactful data decisions that are currently taking over. And what is also interesting to think about on that schema is how not only the data is making decisions, but also how you can use AI to kind of co-pilot people as well. So not just having it offer the decisions and make the decisions, but also what can we glean from these AI decisions that we are not currently doing.
Yeah, like improving productivity, for example. But what is fascinating is you would realize that with the amount of data and the help of AI on how people actually make decisions and how we make decisions and how we should make decisions is like totally two different things.
One thing that I can add is to this discussion is there's also the aspect that as humans we tend to make decisions in certain ways, and we tend to follow a pattern in our decision making. Certain AI systems tend to offer a different solution which we would not have thought of, and like guide us a little bit off track, or we think what on earth is it doing, what on earth is it suggesting, but in reality maybe that is a more efficient approach to take. There have been various examples of this, especially when it comes to, for instance, systems using reinforcement learning, where the system is actually built to learn its own rules. So there are many instances where AI systems are kind of actually, let's say, thinking in a different way than humans think, which is why I always advise, like, okay, think of your data points and think a bit beyond those data points. Try to include things which are not necessarily convergent to your everyday practice, because that tends to have certain biases, certain, I would say, a more narrow or limited perspective, which is us. We have a narrow perspective of life individually, right? But that's why it's important to gain so many different perspectives, so many different data points, because that is going to be more representative then.
Well, you are working with very complex models because language, I think, is the most complex system you can work in. There are a lot of examples that actually monetization came out of universities directly by creating spin-offs. Is there any, well, I'm looking at you, Natalia, too. Is there any projects in this respect? Because I think, especially in language models, I think there's a big future.
So one of the difficulties, of course, is competing with big tech, where the resources are more abundant. But in our case, we do focus on Maltese specifically, and there, I believe we do have a bit of an advantage in terms of dealing with Maltese language, because we are speakers of Maltese, so we actually are closer to the data. Does it mean that we're going to spin out a unicorn on that? I doubt it, to be honest. Yeah, there's still application in terms of trying to commercialize our research.
Successfully?
Hopefully.
I think one big issue is also how to get all these data streams organized so that they can be used properly. Huge amounts of data you have to classify and to find a way to use them properly. How big of an issue is that for a company like Sigma?
Well, that's a big issue actually. But how do we solve this? The main thing is, when you have a lot of data, you want to make sure that you segment them the proper way. Segmentation is the key. Now, how do you do segmentation? That requires deep industry knowledge. And with people who have deep industry knowledge and segmenting the data properly, that could bring you in the competitive advantage. So far, we have managed to segment quite a lot of data and scrape a lot of data in a way that really has helped us transform how we do things. For example, in the past, when we were making decisions, we were relying on only one part of the story. So we were only relying on the user behavioral data, but we didn't know the commercial impact of that data. By connecting the journey and connecting the commercial part of the data, then we were able to understand that some of the decisions, some of the A/B testing that we have been doing were actually misleading because we didn't know the commercial impact. And now we are managing to actually, when we make a call, every decision, every proposal, every suggestion has to go through a rigorous process of analyzing the data and then discussing and debating it, especially when it comes to decisions like how do we enter a new market, which market do we enter, how do we approach the markets, and so on and so on.
So it would be a great help if AI would be intuitive and could take some of this work away, but I think that's a long way to go, even if people like Angelo are working on it.
Yes, and I mean, it's a long way to go, but the way we see AI is more of a helping hand rather than taking over the decisions. Yeah. There is always going to be a human factor in it, but an AI is a helping hand, and it will somehow navigate and help you make a much clearer decision and more accurate and predictive decision, and therefore pivot much quickly if needed, if things don't go right.
In universities, so I think you're looking forward. What's your stance on intuitive support in organizing data?
It's not an easy to solve problem, right? If it was easy, it would be done already. I think when it comes to data, one of the challenges actually is doing good AI systems, but with less data rather than with so much data. So if you think of ourselves as for instance, as we learn language, the amount of data that we're exposed to in our first few years is a lot, but is not as nowhere close. It's just a fraction of what a LLM is being exposed to, right? And we are able to master language, but we're actually able to master language not just in a parrot way, but also in terms of concepts, right? So Angelo mentioned before that our brain is super efficient compared to LLMs nowadays, right? It runs on the same level of efficiency of a light bulb. So when you think in that perspective, the systems that we have are definitely too data hungry. Mm-hmm. And the challenge there is going to be on trying to get our systems to actually work just as good, but with less data.
Mm-hmm. So this would be a kind of intuitive approach. One last short thing, data needs a lot of security. So let me pass that on Sigma. I know you are very responsible with that. So what are your measures, and where do you think will this security question lead to?
You mean security in terms of data integrity?
Data protection.
Data protection.
And of course also that it is reliable data. Both ways.
So in terms of data integrity, we do take care of the data. However, when it comes to security, there are many aspects of security. You know, you have the security in terms of making sure that there is no data leak, the security in terms of ensuring that you are compliant with all the regulations like GDPR or any kind of personal data collection. But this doesn't stop us. This actually complements it, because when your data is secure and you have the integrity and you have passed all the 7 Qs of quality of data, that makes your data much more accurate and therefore leads to much better decisions and unbiased decisions, and you build the proper LLM. And we've been paying attention a lot to data quality and data security, and all of the data that is inserted into our platform goes through a level of 7 layers of filtering, and therefore after that it's properly segmented. And this is how we have built our in-house platform, which is specific to the tech in iGaming, and especially the affiliation niche.
Natalie, what's your advice for your customers and how to deal with that issue?
Well, one of the most important things I would say is to just be very, very mindful of what is happening in your data as you start to collect it. Everything starts at the word go. So as soon as you set things up, you kind of try to minimize the points of failure. So if you have people around you who you know are inputting data, how can you reduce it? For example, if it's something as simple as, let's say, a website form, can you include it in such a way that you minimize the amount of text that needs to be input? Can you make it more automated? Can you include it in such a way that anyone who's entering your data has less points where they could input incorrect data or inaccurate data? Once you have that point set, you are, let's say, most of the way through. You are still going to have to do the filtering. In fact, as Max mentioned, 7 steps of filtering is usually quite good in order to improve the quality of your data. You could even take it a step further and include certain automations, like having chatbots that can process your data as soon as your users are inputting them. That's creating that level of data quality at step 1, which has to start at step 1. Once you can do step 1, you can do steps to 7 pretty well, I would say.
So one very quick last round, one sentence. What is AI to you? Not AI, data. Data, of course.
Definitely, data is a starting point for AI. It's the starting point for our systems. We need to be 100% sure that that data is really a good representation of the problem that we're dealing.
Max?
To me, data is smart decisions, disruption, and creativity.
And Natalie?
Data is the DNA of the future.
Well, this was really a quick last round. Thank you, everybody. I hope you had applause and got some information. And thank you to my panel. And you may go now because I have to stay here because I'm doing the next panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.